How does forest fires affect human? Well, wildfire smoke affects us all. We can take that to the bank. And in the process, they spread air pollution, polluting the air and oxygen that we breathe. And that smoke can be traveled or carried away for thousands and thousands of miles away from the areas that are being burned and travel to unaffected areas. It also causes difficulty breathing when you're in the midst of it. It affects even healthy individual because it's carbon dioxide that's being released into the atmosphere. So this right here, this tree is consuming, or this branch right here is consuming carbon dioxide, methane, and all the harmful toxin that is released into the air via transportation, automobiles, forest fires, burning, and different things. So photosynthesis is taking place right now in this plant. So that's consuming all the bad pollutants and it's making oxygen. So that's one of the positive of the forest. So this is one of the reasons why we shouldn't just go in there and light it down, and we have to micromanage forest fires. It also affects individuals with heart disease, diabetes, asthma, COPD, and other lung disease. So when the jungle, the forest is under fire, the tree will release that carbon dioxide into the air. The smoke from burning it, that's carbon dioxide that's being released into the atmosphere. That also affects the ozone layer. It affects the oxygen that we consume. And at the same time, the smoke will burn and hurt your eyes. It will irritate your respiratory system and worsen chronic and heart lung disease. Okay? So the air pollution that's being released into the atmosphere, that emission harms the atmosphere and all living things. And in the same process, it's allowing the greenhouse effect to affect our atmosphere, because it falls and goes right back to the fact that we're releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is a key greenhouse gas that affects the ozone layer, and it's basically harmful and bad for the environment. So now you look here, this is where I'm at, this is in the environment. Listen. Right now you have the breeze that's coming through, but if you listen keenly, there are other organisms that's playing and having an effect right now. I can hear bees buzzing. We can hear birds chirping in the distance. You can hear creepy crawly insects on the ground and other lizards. You can hear seeds and stuff falling from the trees down to the floor bed. So now, due to the development and expansion, Belize have been experiencing more intense and severe forest fires. Oh, since I said that, we just had a... did I scare it off? Oh, there it is. There was a wasp. It's over there. It's so tiny you can't see it, and it moves so fast. So there's all types of life that relies and depend on the forest for survival. Back to that Belize, we have been having more intense fire pandemic in the last 10 years, and prior to the closer to that 10 year, which is the last 4 years, the fires have been a lot more intense and severe nationwide. And that's due to we're clearing the forest for farming and all these other different things. But we can cohabitate. We can do selective cutting, or selective cuttings, because at the same time we have to pay attention. You just can't just go in there and clear cut everything. At least be a little bit more environmentally friendly and wise. I mean, you have cedar. When you just come in and you just clear out the forest, you're going to knock out the cedar pods that's going to grow. And cedar is a type of timber that we use for building. Mahogany, Nargosta, Santa Maria, Dingweo, Palo de Hombre. And then you have two types of mahogany. You have the red and the white. And a multitudes of different types of trees. Sapatio, all that stuff are going to get destroyed. So yeah, if you're planning to, harvest forest and transform it into farmland, there's a lot that you have to take into effect and consideration, which is when you go in and you clear cut and you tear down everything, you're knocking down all these seeds, you're preventing all those pods from growing back, so you're going to have a timber shortage there. You're going to be burning the product because you don't have no use for it. So that's a negative effect on the environment itself. So now that right there is going to cause the environment to heat up. We're going to have, the atmosphere is going to heat up. So just by us doing all that, we're going to have more intense fires because the atmosphere is ripe. The condition is there. We're creating conditions where it's suitable to have more forest fires. So we have to be a little bit more wise. Like this right here. I know not everyone will want that on their ranch or property, but that right there is a plant that you can use that to touch your house. And if it's done properly, it can last anywhere between 10 to 20, maybe extend it a little bit, 25 years. That's material that you can use. So it's like, look at what we're trying to do, or if you're going to cut it down, at least chop it down and then have someone that's going to come in and claim it and use it for something. I mean, the same leaves and stuff can be used to make hats, baskets. I mean, there's plenty of different things that we can do to try to see about how we can micromanage and make it cost effectively. If you're not going to use it, you might know someone that have the ability and the capacity to use it to create something out of it instead of just burning it. So as I stated, we have had more forest fires in the country. And yeah, when you're doing this type of stuff, at least factor in and take into consideration that 8 feet is the minimum for a fire pass. The cherries can travel for well, not thousand, but it can travel for miles. If the cherry is big enough, it will travel for a good distance, and it can ignite a different area as well, along with the smoke. So we have to learn how to be mindful and take a more proactive approach on how we're going to um, circumvent the situation or the predicament that we're in, because we're all trying to figure out how to create financial security so that we can provide for ourselves and our families and our loved one. And yeah, I understand that that's part of economics, and part of economy, or the economy, it's based on cash and credit. So like, yeah, I go into the bank and I borrow, and then that cash that comes out, I go and I spend it in different places. That is paying several different employees. And then if I go and I have the cash and I go somewhere else and I spend that cash, I buy the product, that's a direct way of funneling back the cash into the community. And I understand that process, and this is the reason why we have to see how we can figure out how to collaborate and work together to make more than one product. So say you come in and you're clear cutting and you're chopping, all you're doing is just clearing the land for your own personal gain. But what if someone can come in there and harvest the herbs? Because there are going to be trees in there that has medicinal properties. There are going to be underbrush that have medicinal properties. So these different people, these different entities can come in and harvest all that material before it gets chopped down, so that we can create more opportunity. How you build and develop and invest is you figure out what are some of the things, the products that your nation, your country produce, and then you look at how can we produce more and how can we manage production and lower or maintain a cost that where we can sell or cause our products to be liquidated at a rapid pace. So like there's different cognitive wheels that are play here, are there to assist. All right, when you go back to the forest fires, when it comes in, it will burn all these different things right here. It will clear it, and it will create an atmosphere and an environment where the trees that are already strong in there, it will provide more nutrition and nourishment for those trees. They won't have to compete for the material down there. And at the same time, when you look down there, all that right there, that's biodegradable, that's carbon, so that's going to retain moisture. That's a thing that you can come in and learn instead of just going in. If you're planning to invest in a ranch or a farm, I mean, at least cut or clear cut a couple years before you're expecting to come in and plant. Give that stuff time to decompose and rot, because that is adding to the soil. It's creating an environment that will be suitable to allow you to mass produce whatever you're growing. The ash or whatever chemical, that biochemical that we get after burning, that's just a temporary thing. You're adding, we only have 3 inches from here, from the butt there to the tip. That's only 3 inches of topsoil that can sustain life. So imagine if you're adding to that another inch or 2 or 3. So now you have 6 inches, that you have this 6 inches depth of quality soil that you can plant and grow stuff. Now that right there, that's an eco-friendly form of farming. Because if you allow and you permit and you give that time for it to naturally break down, it's releasing sulfur, sodium. There's a lot of organic elements that's going back into the soil, back into the land. And then you have trees. If you do selective and you don't come in and chop down everything, then you're allowing the canopy above to slow down the process of allowing this direct sun. So this is what you would call indirect sunlight, where it's not coming in and making contact with the soil directly and belting and beating down the soil and making it, a little bit more difficult for your plants to survive, because now you have the shade to allow, you're creating an atmosphere and an environment where the plant is getting enough sunlight and it's not directly in the sun, and it has some shade and some time to allow its roots to take flight and start to grow. And you can also use the area, you can use the upper part of it to hang stuff to grow as well. So now when you come in and you burn this, all this stuff gets released back into the atmosphere. You're going to have ash that's remaining on the topsoil. Imagine when it rains, all this stuff is going to get washed and run directly into our watershed, into our streams, creek, reservoir, lakes, rivers. And yeah, that's a positive and a negative for the river, because yeah, it's gonna provide nutrition for the marine life that's down there as well. But the whole point of this is to figure out the process, try to figure out how can we become more eco-friendly farming, because if you have the right element, eco-friendly farming has been proven to where the land will yield more products yearly as well. And it's safe to say that 80% of all the contaminants, the stuff that's going into our rivers and on the land, which is into the atmosphere, is humans. It's all us. We're the ones doing it. We're the one that's bringing the environment to the brink of where Mother Earth will have to do whatever she needs to do for sustainability and survival of herself and the different things and creatures that are not directly affecting or causing her to retaliate in that sense. But yeah, we are. So they say a part of doing something, say someone taught you something and you're doing it over and over and expecting a different result, that's called insanity. So basically, we have to start looking at other ways on how we can mass produce an insane amount of food that we can feed ourselves and feed the people on the planet. So basically, what we can do is focus on education, teamwork, plus awareness on the effects of forest fires, and go about educating people about eco-friendly farming as well, so that they're willing to adapt. And if we can come up with a schedule orientation to show that it's feasible and it's profitable, people will be willing to commit to it. But right about now, we have to look at how can we educate, empower, and get teamwork and awareness so that we can invoke change. Because it's up to us. Each and every individual, it's up to us. Even if you say, hey, it has nothing to do with me, back to economics. If you know someone is doing a type of farming that is not healthy to the environment, you as a consumer have buying power, which is that financial power. You get to decide whether you're going to support him or someone who is out there producing and growing products that is sound and environmentally friendly and health and a lot healthier, which is organic. Now we understand, I understand that yeah, there's a need to, put chemicals and all that stuff. But at the same time, that is a product that you're consuming. Chemicals strip the nutrients in the soil. It kill off the bioorganism that's in the soil that makes it healthy, that brings the pH level up so that it can sustain life. Okay? So yeah, you as a consumer play a critical role as well on how to empower those people who are doing right. And it's all in the grand schemes of things. So we all have a choice here. Just another friendly note, just being here without this totally being clear cut, it's a lot cooler. The temperature is totally different than being in a different section where it's getting that direct sunlight. And remember, you have to add, that's why we use chemicals. We're using chemicals so that it can fight off insects and all that stuff, and so that the land can yield more produce or product. You have to understand that when you use chemicals, you're stripping the natural chemicals that are there to sustain life, and then you're going to have to invest and buy more products. And that in itself is creating a conundrum there on its own, because you have to pay attention that those living creature or living organisms will adapt to the different types of chemicals that you're putting there. So if you're using the same chemical consistently, your product will be affected by the different critters and insects within that area. And the same in bio-friendly farming. But you also have organic friendly chemicals that you can use to keep insects and different things off of your ranch. And you do need some of those. Like for instance, you need the honeybees and the different types of wasps or flying critters, because they help to pollinate stuff. Okay, so that's why they're starting to find out that that is a better way to do farming, because it produces more, because of the types of different elements that are there that is thriving and there to sustain life. This is what you have to deal with when you're just clearing everything off the land and you're not leaving any carbon, any biodegradable. You're just going to have the soil there. So yeah, you're going to have other things that you're going to apply to your ranch to make it sustainable, and so that it can produce and yield whatever you need it to yield for your financial gain. So forest fires cause erosion, first of all, and it strips all the topsoil when the monsoon and stuff comes in during the rainy season. All that the topsoil sediments that's required for the soil to maintain and sustain life gets transferred into the river. And yes, there's a positive and a negative side of that. If too much of it gets into the river, it's going to have a negative effect on the marine and river life. I think that was a maybe a woodpecker or a kingfisher. And that's the first time I heard that too, so I'm not so sure. And I'm learning birding as well. Okay, back to topic. So you see this right here? That is a perfect environment for hatcheries, for the different types of river life that's relying on this river for life. Now, when you have too much stuff that gets in the water, you need to pray and hope that a lot of stuff like this gets in the river as well. Because once the trees and stuff gets burned and they're not totally, burnt, this is a byproduct, which is coal. And coal is environmentally friendly product, and it will filter out the water. And yeah, this teeny weeny piece here is not enough to filter and clean out the river, but it does its part. Just like how there are other living organisms in the plant or flora life, there are stuff in the marine environment that's there to help bring back the pH level to make it suitable to sustain life and support life. But yeah, you will need coal to make contact with the river. You don't want too much ash, because ash is going to have a negative effect on it. So basically, we don't want, you're looking at, okay, how much chemicals that you spray on your land, especially if it's next to the river. A lot of that chemical, let's say 80% of it, is going to be going into the river eventually. When it rains and stuff, all that stuff is going to get washed down into the rivers, especially if you don't have a lot of carbon on the ground to help micromanage and maintain. And carbon as well retain a lot of moisture. So it's critical to have carbon on your property or on your ranch, even in your yard. So basically what we need is to have more photochemical reactive compounds that's going to enter into the stream, like non-methane voltate, which is an organic carbon that we need to go into the waterways and streams, creek, reservoirs, and rivers to help bring the pH level back up. Okay, just to mention a few things that gets released is carbon dioxide, which is a negative, methane, nitrous oxide is another unhealthy byproduct that gets released into the atmosphere. So I always advocate for planting trees or pruning. Why? Because trees consume those two gas right there and make oxygen for us to breathe. So wood and ash are considered a non-toxic byproduct, but at the same time, wood, charcoal, and all that other stuff contains alkaline material, which is potassium carbonate and potassium hydrate, which are soluble in water. So like it goes back to this right here. Okay, so this is an environmentally friendly product for rivers and streams and reservoirs and all our waterways. All right, well, there you have it. I hope that was informative. Please like, share, comment, plus subscribe to the channel. All right.